another new guy thing that I can take.
That one's a good one for everybody to sit through with telling them
It's good. They do some, it's just nice to know
what's going on.
what's.
I just couldn't make the time slots work.
No.
Those Bad times.
Everybody ready now? Close. All right, I got 6:04. We'll call the meeting, the Highland School Board to order. First item is a roll call by the clerk, and since the clerk's absent, Katrina, can you run through those quick?
Sure. Finish. Absent. Drushmeyer.
Here.
Dury.
Here.
Esser.
Here.
Mischek. Schimick. Here. Jaeger. Here.
Thank you. The pledge of allegiance is behind the screen, sure. The pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Next item is posting of the meeting given to the public pursuant to Wisconsin statute 1984. A motion by Esser and a second by Drury. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is approval of the May 12th meeting minutes.
I make a motion to approve.
Second. A motion by Schimick and a second by Esser to approve the May 12th regular meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is current expenses and vouchers payable.
So sorry these are so last minute, but we're trying to spend down and purchase things for next year as much as we can. So some of these are just finalized today. And so you'll see certain things in here. Some things that like 15,000 for iReady toolbox, curriculum. We have our liability insurance paid in this year. So some of these things that we paid at this time last year, we're paying forward, so we don't have to pay them next year. We would always pay it like this, but in a tight budget year, we have options to push some of this to another year if we needed to. And we did also take advantage of some things. We paid 3 years forward, some technology licenses and that type of thing, because we are still, we will have money for fund balance and we'll have money for Fund 46 this year also. it might still be on here, but you guys know that both of, those pods, those storage pods have been emptied out. Ken was mad if we didn't get that done, so we got that done.
Most of it, dumpster.
Did it?
Yes, and not too much of it.
Not enough.
Probably down in Mike's garage.
Extra storage space down in the here.
It's like the wrestling co-op fee on there, is that reimbursement for last year, or is that paying forward?
That's for last year. I think Linda said, that, she got that straightened out or not, but there was, she kind of caught that there was a tuition charge, so I don't know if that will be adjusted later, if that was adjusted in this, but she mentioned that to me. So it's for this past year.
Bryce, this is Linda. Yes, it is up to date. That is the correct amount. He sent me a revised invoice yesterday.
Okay, thanks.
Good.
So water softener, I thought we paid for that last month. Is that something else? Or is it for the installation or something? The amount for water softener.
No, we didn't pay that last month. We just received the bill just the other day, so that has not been paid until now.
Okay. I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
A motion by Drury and a second by Schimick to approve the current expenses and vouchers payable. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is public appearances before the board, not for action. May have anything for us tonight? All right, moving on. Sometimes we'll rearrange the agenda a little bit if we've got visitors. So Chloe, are you ready yet or not quite yet?
Yeah, I think we've got it.
You want to go ahead and
Sure.
get it taken care of? Josh, do you want to introduce her? And
You betcha.
so this will be under the senior project proposal. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, this is an idea that Chloe has. This is Chloe Campbell, I guess now a senior.
Yeah.
Do I get lights, Bradley, for me? Has an idea that she'd like to bring to the board and as a discussion piece in regard to her project for next year. So a lot of times, a lot of juniors will graduate in June, or before they get to senior, will start their senior projects early. So she wants to get rolling in something new.
Good job.
All right, Chloe?
Okay, so my idea was to remodel the girls' locker room for like my big project, but I would like mostly to do more like equal rights stuff with my project. So I figured the girls' locker room would be a good jump off point, especially to give back to the school. And with the guys' locker room being remodeled after they kind of trashed it, I figured that the girls should be rewarded one even though they didn't trash it. So the main goal is just to make more space in there. Right now, there's a huge storage space, as you can see in the photo over there, that takes up most of the room that we had. I know Mr. Show for basketball, we would go on the side for sitting in there, and we would kind of fill up that whole area. And I asked the girls this year, and they said it was a lot more crowded. And with the idea, I tried to look at the need too. So I got a statement from the girls and one from the boys because I wanted to, see what they thought too. So the girls' statement was, I think that it would be beneficial to restore the girls' locker room. As athletes, we need a lot of time in the locker room. To us, it's a place to spend time with our teammates, not where we get ready for practices and games. For our girl athletes, improving the locker room would be a huge gift for the dedication we have gave to our sport. The restoration would be greatly appreciated by all of us. And then the boys' statement, it was, well, having more room and lockers and stuff obviously helps because it's not as crammed when you get changed and stuff like that. And sometimes when you have a good locker room, you go to other schools and see their crappy ones and you're thankful for what you have. And I definitely agree with the boys' statement and the girls' statement. So I just wanted to show that the boys, even though they have one, they were thinking of what if they still had their old one. So my idea for this project was to just try to keep it simple. You know, all the girls are like, let's get rid of the showers and let's get rid of this and redo the floor. Like, you know, I'm not gonna do anything really big like that. I'm trying to be realistic with the budget. So my idea is to take 2 rows out and to create more of an open space and make kind of horseshoe benches, kind of like there is right now in the boys' locker room. And the girls' lockers, most of the girls actually don't use the lockers. So we probably could go off of just having the small ones in there. So we could replace the small ones we take out on the wall with the ones that there are. And because most of the girls that use the lockers are in Phi Ed, and they only put their clothes in there, which don't take that much space up. I also would love to turn the locker room into more of a sporty locker room. So I would like to add like quotes on the walls, do stuff with the whiteboard, like put a basketball rim on it with tape and like a quotes section on there. So make it just really cool for everybody. And I just kind of want it more functional, especially with our bathroom area. I don't have any pictures of that, but it's very like rickety kind of, I want to say. Like if you're in the big stall, the door won't shut all the way unless you shut the little stall door. And if the girl in the next stall next to you gets out of the bathroom, then, and you're in the big stall, your door is going to open right in front of everybody. So it's kind of have to, you know, have a partner when you go to the bathroom in there. So my idea would just be simply trying to change some things and make it as simple as possible so that I can get my hours and not spend that much money. That's all I
My
have.
question, Chloe, is where you have the X's at, are any of those lockers being used currently? Or do we need to have, are they, I guess administration, you gotta tell me, do we have a need for those lockers with the incoming classes sizes?
No, I mean,
So those two eye pieces that come out, they're not being used at all.
I mean, they might be, but I mean, as far as the ones that are on the outside, as Chloe said, I mean, girls don't use them. We would have enough because they're half lockers and smaller lockers for every kid. It wouldn't be a very big locker, but with,
You
you know,
want to keep the larger lockers if you could, but you wouldn't have enough, you don't think?
Yeah, I mean, some girls, use the larger ones, but the smaller ones kind of keep the stuff all together and like kind of, we don't really bring that much. And especially if like most girls have their basketball bags, they don't really fit in there as is. So
Even the
more
bigger
width.
ones, they don't fit in?
Yeah, so it's more width, not length. So if we did want to have lockers that would fit the bags, it'd have to be thicker lockers, like the boys' football ones.
So you just take them home every day? Your bag goes home every day?
No, they usually leave them in the locker room. They don't really put them in the lockers because they don't fit. So they usually end up on the ground or in the door entrance. And yeah, that's another thing I was thinking, like maybe if we could make hooks just to get them off the ground. And I know for my softball bag, they have grids on them. I can just hook my bag on there because, my bag won't fit into the width.
And then my next question is, where those lockers are being removed, obviously there's a concrete pad that they sit on, so what do we do with the concrete pad?
So I'm thinking of adding the horseshoe benches. So since it's already raised, it's gonna be kind of more predominant. And it's gonna be easier to put the benches on there and just like, so it's just kind of gonna stay there. but I'm hoping that it won't be as tall as it is. I tried looking under there and it looks like the lockers come right to them. But obviously, some problems might come up with that.
So we took those out in the boys' locker room, but that's where the benches are now, right?
We actually took it out, then we took that concrete out too.
We took concrete
Yeah,
out,
smooth
and
it out.
epoxy right over it. So that's, I guess, another question is, if you plan on putting the bench on top of those, are you proposing that we epoxy the top of that concrete curb? Or are you just wanting to paint it?
Probably so it would stay like the floor, to epoxy it, but I'm kind of, looking at cutting costs, because I don't want it to cost too much.
Right.
So, my dad obviously could probably give me a good solution to that. Maybe a deal on some paint.
I'm just asking what you're proposing.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with either one, I just want to know what you're proposing.
What color are those lockers?
They look awful.
Jumper.
Are they supposed to be red?
Yeah.
Supposed to be red,
It's probably like an off reddish orange.
And that's what we said, I mean, obviously, we had this discussion before, right, about when we redid the boys in the boys' locker room, I mean, it was needed
Yeah.
to be redone, and the girls, honestly, just did a lot better job of taking care of the locker room.
They're
You know?
girls.
Huh?
They're
Yeah.
girls.
So it really, we talked about that, it was not a gender thing, it was just, yeah, this is in great shape, you're gonna spend the money to do something in this when it's in such good shape right now.
Yeah.
But, that was probably, when we first started that, probably 4 or 5 years ago. So.
And I think the girls' locker room was always on the list
Yeah.
of things that,
Do things.
it just kept kind of going down the list.
It's still, yeah, it's still on the list, it just hasn't made it to the top priority, so.
Well, it sounds like the bathroom needs priority in there.
Looks like it, or sounds like it.
I was gonna say, I also have pictures, like, not in my presentation, but I think this is Mr. Tucker's, but, so I kind of did like a shaking of the bathroom, and you could really shake the bottom of them, and they're really easy to move. And I know we've asked Mike to pick some, and I think his solution was putting a little wood block under one. So that was kind of the temporary solution, but I'm looking for more of a permanent fix, so.
So that to me sounds like all these related petitions.
So, Chloe,
Privacy is important.
if this works out, I don't know if this will work for you, right?
Yeah.
For your project, if it does come to fruition, I mean, would you put a budget together then as part of it? So you would work with, obviously, Coach Aid and obviously we bring somebody in like we do with the boys, right?
Okay.
And see what we can do.
Yeah.
With the lockers though, I mean, if we take those 2 sections out and kept the lockers around the outside, you think that would be a good fix?
Yeah, and I was even talking to Mr. Ryder and them, asking how many girls they know that are in Phi-Ed.
Yeah.
And so I talked to the other girls too, they would like the other set, kind of more closer by the storage thing, because we were trying to figure out what middle sets we could take out. And since the one is kind of over by the whiteboard already, they thought of taking out the first 2 instead. So maybe just the first 2 would, kind of have it in, this is kind of a rough picture, but by the storage shed, we would have the storage shed wall, and then the locker next to that, and then the locker on the far right, the one right with the X. So we would still have kind of a section.
Comedian and stuff?
Yeah, so, I mean, it would still be on the other side, but you would probably get more lockers with the horseshoe with full of lockers rather than just a horseshoe with the storage shed. And in my investigation, I did look on how the lockers were connected, and it looks like it's just drilling, they're just bolted in with it. So, I mean, I might be wrong, but I tried to look in there and see how it could be possible. And it looked like a pretty easy fix, but stuff comes up, and I obviously know that. And I'm figuring my dad probably could help me with some of the stuff to cut the cost too, because this is something that would give back to my community and would kind of tie into my gender equality thing, even though, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because, I can understand what the boys did to their locker room. It's just something that I can give back to my community and kind of try to tie it in with my project.
So would you like this done before school starts or during the school year?
Probably preferably before the school year, because no girls are in there right now. There might be just some softball stuff in there, but in July, there's not gonna be, and I know if they have basketball practice up here or people come weightlifting, then that obviously will just be closed down, but they can use the bathroom still. So I'm just planning on like, maybe just taking a weekend, hope maybe it'll be that quick, or, you know, it might take longer. But, I know us Campbells really like to get this stuff done right away, so once I get started, I'm not gonna wanna stop. So I'm assuming this is not gonna take that long. Obviously, problems do come up.
How long did it take for the guys' lockers to get revamped?
That was about a 4-month deal. By the time we ordered them and got them.
Oh, but you had to order all new lockers.
Right.
Which they will not be needing here.
Well, my question is, when you meet with Coach Aid, I would get the proposal and ask what the cost would be for the lockers.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to this extent, we might as well find out what the cost is.
That's my, if I was to find out, you know, if we took them out, the locker on the outside, do we want to just go with bigger ones? So that's more
So
what you talk about,
Yeah.
width is the big problem.
Yeah,
Right, so that eliminates the problem with the girls just dropping their bag inside the locker room, then they put their bag right in it, put a padlock on it, and we have no crying or foul play saying, someone was in my bag or in my locker, blah, 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 it's done.
All right, any other questions for Chloe, anyone?
No, I just want to mention, Chloe, I think it's a good project and appreciate what you've done so far on it.
Definitely.
As far as planning goes, that's great, and I think we're good at working on that. It's just always the caveat that the budget is always
Yeah.
something, and as far as timing goes, we tend to spend more money at the end of the fiscal year, which is right now,
Yeah.
rather than at the beginning of it, and so that's just something that's always hard from a timing standpoint, but I just don't want to make any promises there for money that we may or may not have at this point. But
yeah, and that's.
as far as planning it and figuring out where we're at, and that's where, you know, Kenny was saying about just checking what all new lockers would cost, and if we have lockers in there that nobody's using because they aren't functional, then at least to see what it costs to get lockers that, because the boys' lockers are wider that they got, that in theory was for pads and equipment that way, but like you said, all the bags now are getting a lot bigger.
Yeah,
But now, if we did something like this, we did approve it, it's not to say that we can't, you do your portion of it where you take the lockers out and you put the bench in, okay?
Yep.
That's not to say that maybe we don't approve the lockers to be put in like next summer.
okay,
But it sounds
If
like
there's money for it.
yeah,
if we could prioritize and get the stalls fixed before. I don't know if that's, you know, all the contractors are busy. and-
Yeah, so like the bathroom for toilet partitions, if you got on, you start with Mike right now and got what you need to have, there is no reason why you can't have that done and reinstalled by the time school starts.
That sounds like it's a priority.
yeah.
Get that done.
So I don't see any reason why that stuff should be pretty easily available, that, you know, if you order it here in the next 2 or 3 weeks, it should be in time for school and be ready to go.
And then the second part, Chloe, you mentioned, if we take out, you know, if we get, even if we take out one, but we're talking about a big thing is for the meeting space. You know?
Yeah.
As you and I both know, in
Yeah.
basketball stuff, you're all grand, and then you got kids around this corner.
Yeah.
Are you listening back, you know, you can't see them, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, go that far, and then as Kenny said, we get that done, it's enough for your project to get done, and then we'll have that, you know, we've had it before where this is the first step in a 3-step process, for example, you know?
Yeah,
Then the next summer, depending, as Mike said, what's left in the budget, maybe we can do the lockers. As long as that's enough for you, you'd have to work with
yeah,
Mr. Scanlon, Ms. Straka, to see how much you would have to suffice your project. But
yeah, and you know, this could always turn into a sports project, and I could like go with the softball dugouts too, so if I did have to end up only doing the bathrooms maybe, you know, I could still get hours somehow with the softball dugout, or just, you know, park, you know, there's a lot of sports things that I could turn it into rather than an equal rights thing, which is kind of isn't, but you know, just a way that wanted to do this. Also, if we did move these two, we would have to switch the mirror and the whiteboard. but they're just bolted into the wall, and I looked that the bolts are the same, so it would be just an easy swap.
Good.
So that's also another thing that could have other things.
Good job.
Anyone else have any questions for Chloe? All right, thanks, Chloe, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what it looks like.
So do you just want me to leave this for Mr. Tucker, or?
I think you just log off there and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Harvey, you got that bad boy?
Maybe.
You wanna grab the lights again, Josh, or?
Yep.
All right, question?
Oh.
For that.
That was reaching everyone.
I need to hold it.
Yeah.
Josh, you're up.
All right. Obviously, since we met last, a lot of stuff has happened. Graduation, 3 of them. So I just want to add, I thought graduation was a great success this year, considering, the parameters we were under, and we were able to get the families here and close relatives and get the students here in gowns and able to do it in the gym. I thought it went very well. I was very happy with Ms. McCarthy, the senior advisor, and how the kids worked with us and made it a great success. So, summer school's rolling already. Remember, we added those days and extended the school year on, so we finished that up and got a lot of kids that were, well, I want to say we started between the middle and high school, close to 40 kids that needed to stay here and get stuff done. So obviously that's way too many for the end of the school year. So we extended the school year and got that down to where, I think we have 4 here right now in the high school that are taking credit recovery. And we have between 7 and 8 middle school kids that are here in our summer school program, getting extra work done, get ready for next year. So with that, I'm extremely happy about that. So, spring sports are finishing up here. The tournament is starting tomorrow night for the boys. They played Potosi. They got the 4 seed. They got second in conference. Did well. And played Potosi Castle here tomorrow night for the first round of the playoffs, where they split with them throughout the year. So it's gonna be a good game for them tomorrow night. The girls, we had the 5, and the girls team got the 5 seed. And they go to Belmont again on Monday night. So it's the 3rd time playing Belmont. We beat them the first 2 times. So we got the 5 seed as a conundrum. But anyway, we're going down there, giving our best shot. They had their conference meeting, and I can share that with you now. Coach Campbell shared it with the girls tonight. They got a tie for conference champs. So they started the year 2-7, and since then have just been playing some great ball, coming together. It's actually a 3-way tie for conference on this side between Belmont, Potosi, and us. So at the conference, all-conference meeting, and our kids just did great. We had 5 girls that made first team all-conference. Esty Goodweiler, Lily Mitchick, Meg Terrell, Ella Cody, and Grace Dreschmeyer all made first team. We had 2 girls, honorable mention, just here, Chloe Campbell and Maya Hennessy. We had the player of the year with Esty Goodweiler. We had the pitcher of the year with Grace Dreschmeyer, and Coach Campbell got coach of the year. He got co-coach with Coach Kading from Potosi. So can't ask for a lot better than that when it comes to conference awards. So the kids, I'm very proud of them. Obviously, they did a great job. Some things obviously that are going to come forward to you. Well, before that, we have our board up for the Levi Linshai, my Hennessy's project. Remember, we did the Levi Linshai board. That is done now. So if you guys want to go see that at the board meeting or anytime, it's hanging up in the weight room. It's awesome. And then the other sign that we had in honor of Levi, we're going to put up tomorrow that goes on the ticket booth. And we'll actually use that since we have to charge now for the WA events for baseball. So that'll get its first test tomorrow, so that'll be nice. Some future things, obviously, before the next board meeting, obviously, I'll come back with all the handbooks. So the things that I'd like for you guys to think about on your mind is, two things for me is cell phones and dress code. Cell phones today are really becoming an issue, distraction for kids. And, you know, as much as we try to police it, it is difficult because it is so much, we have so many kids that are addicted to them, to be honest with you. And for them to give those phones up is going to be hard, but we need to do something different. Some things I'm thinking about is, you know, I thought as much as, hey, they go to first hour and they hand their phones in, they pick them up at the end of the day. You know, I don't know if that's too extreme. Your thoughts on that would be appreciated, but I think we do need to take steps to ensure that kids are off the things and actually paying more attention to what needs to happen at school. I know parents are really, some of them are really strong about wanting their kids to have the phone on them all the time. And I appreciate that. However, when it becomes such a distraction and such an addiction, it really hurts their education. And I'm seeing too much of it. Other schools are too. I'll talk to more schools. There's been a couple schools that got rid of them. I want to talk with them some more and then just see how it went. But something to think about, something to bring for you next month. The other one is dress code, the shorts. You know, our dress code says gotta be at the fingertips. Well, I don't think girls can buy a pair of shorts that are that, you can't get them. They're shorter than at the fingertips. So I just want to make you aware. I'll come up with something and see what other schools are doing on that. I got a message out to just the Six Rivers principals on how people are addressing that and see if there's something we can change there so it still meets dress code, but it's not an issue that we have to worry about. So that's coming too. And then lastly for me, I mentioned this last meeting, I met with Lynn again and Mike, well, not just Mike, but football in particular, but the future of our sports here and whether co-ops or something different needs to happen. Our middle school numbers in boys particularly are really small. Sixth grade, for example, basketball, we have one kid. So the freshman coming in is a large class. So we'll go from next year's football will be the largest that we've had probably, I can't even remember how long. It's gonna be great numbers, but losing the seniors next year, that going forward is gonna get continually smaller and smaller. So something else needs to happen, whether we go 8-man co-op, we need to look at those things. Not just football, softball, right now we have 10 girls. Baseball, you know, their numbers are better that way this year, but our numbers, you know, they're just getting less and less kids are involved in sports. You know, we're always looking at different ways we can promote our teams. My basketball team, for example, the girls' nice ball is probably gonna be one of the biggest I've ever had. So, and that's great. And I don't see it with basketball as far as the girls. That needs to happen something real soon. But I do see it with the boys that we need to look at something for, well, I guess for when the next year's freshmen get to be seniors, you know, that's where it's really gonna be a tough one. So some things, obviously, I want to start those conversations, want to have those meetings and share with you guys the best way to pursue this. If you can remember when we talked about football before the co-op, we have a co-op, as you know, with wrestling. I think that's going very well. And, but we had community meetings with football, if you guys can remember. And at that point, co-op was not very popular in football. You know, I don't know if it's changed now or not. You know, 8-man's becoming more popular. Is that something that we want to look at? So tough conversations to have, but needed conversations to have. I just don't want to get us caught behind the 8 ball. And, you know, because when you go to the WA, you got to have, it's kind of 2-year increments. So we have to be ready when something needs to happen that we're ready to go. So, lastly, just around school here, Mike and the crew are obviously ripping rooms out, getting them cleaned up, the old summer process. We'll talk more about as far as our staff later, that's some issues we need to look at, but overall, we're plugging away. So, let me address that now. Mike? Espanol? All right. Spanish, Miss Weber, as you know, was on maternity leave, and she would like to come back at 50%. So saying that, what we would like to do is we will post it and see if we can get a 50% teacher that teaches Spanish. However, that's extremely difficult, but we'll try. So we met with Ms. Weber again today. Obviously, we've been talking to her since she first started wanting to do this. And if we can't find someone, we do have a plan where she can teach and to do an asynchronous day when she's not teaching. So plan for the classes for every day and be here, half the time, so we can still meet the needs of the students and still get Spanish taught here.
I guess my question is, if she's wanting to do it 50%, why are we posting for 50% provision?
Right.
Because technically it's a full, she's got two freshman classes, two Spanish 1 next year. She should teach AP English, Spanish 2, Spanish 3, and Spanish 4. So, and
She
then
wants,
A3 Spanish.
she wants to do full days and have full days off.
Yeah.
So you'd have to incorporate 2 teachers to alternate.
I know.
That doesn't sound practical.
Okay. I get what she wants to do, I understand that, but to bring in, to me, that sounds like a logistical nightmare.
We don't think we're gonna find where's that person either.
We'll try, but.
So Josh, what's the plan for next year for block scheduling? Are we going back to 8 hours?
Correct.
I think you're gonna have a lot of students that are not gonna be this.
Well, and they're gonna be confused from getting.
Well,
one
not so much
education.
data, but I think a lot of it, their system prepares them for college,
What's this?
the block system. I think you find that a lot of them, the students I've talked to, a lot of them have said they prefer the block system because it gives them more time to get 4 classes of homework done in one day versus 7 or 8 classes of homework in one day. And I think if you kind of looked at that, I think you could probably see a lot of those students were doing a lot less studying at night with the block system than they were an 8-hour day.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I see your point, as far as half the classes, however, technically they should be getting twice the work in that time.
And are they
You know what I
getting
mean?
that?
What's that?
Are they getting that?
It's tough. Because if you give a 90-minute class that's 245 and you try to teach 2 lessons in one day, for example, math, it's really hard. You try to teach 2 lessons, then you do that math, what we call the math breaks, where you take a break and then you've been sitting down for 90 minutes, it's tough on kids too. And my opinion, it doesn't work as well. And some kids, yeah, you're right, some kids love it. Shop class is great. They can get out of project, don't have to clean up in half an hour, right? So, but the majority of the staff, think it's just, middle school is really hard. Middle school is even worse than high school. Having a middle school kid keep their attention in the math class for 90 minutes, if you ask those tests is an absolute, especially our youngest one, like 6th graders. It's really hard, really hard. And I just don't think we got enough education, enough, not scope and sequence, just enough done, I guess I could say. Not this year, last year, was, with everything else going on, there's a lot of things that played into it, don't get me wrong. However, in my experience and what I've seen and what I've talked to, it's 8-hour days seems to be a benefit for us.
And the reason why I asked that, Josh, is it would make a difference if you were block scheduling somebody half-time. You could do different classes, different days, but if it's the 8-hour day, then you're actually having 2 teachers teach the same class, right?
Correct. So what we talked about, so how would that work? So you're gonna tell that teacher what you taught? So what they do is they would split, our plan would be they would split what they would teach. So I'll teach this part of the Spanish too, you're gonna teach this part of the spell, the other person's not planning, they're not planning, I did this today, now you start there tomorrow, you know what I mean? So it's 2 separate things that are all getting done at the same level. So, yeah, it's not gonna be, it's far from ideal. However, Ms. Weber's a great teacher, if anybody can do it, she can do it. And finding a Spanish teacher, I mean, it's just almost impossible. But we'll try.
So what's more likely to happen is we won't find them. Then that plan would be, Ms. Weber would teach, 2 days a week and alternating days, but then the kids would have certain assignments, certain things to log on the computer, and she would plan the other days, she just wouldn't be in the district, so we'd have to provide a place for them to go, and a supervisor, whether it's a teacher or an aide, and it would be like hybrid learning that way. And that also actually is similar to, some college learning, and there's some labs and things, so that might be the best scenario if we did that. Then to get a subpar full-time teacher or something. So we want to try to consider everything that way. Again, like Josh says, it's less than ideal. I don't know how many years she'd want to do that. It has to do with choices she's making with her young child and daycare things and being with her child, and if she has some more kids. So we want to keep the door open and not we'd like to keep her if we could, but.
I understand that, so then that also transfers over to what are we spending? She at 50%, then she's still on our insurance,
Yes.
full?
No, she asked that they be prorated, so if she gets 88% or 87.5% paid, if she was 50%, it'd be 44 that we would pay and she'd pay the rest. However, there's a scenario where she'd be maybe slightly more than 50% if she's planning these other days, because we're going from a full-time person down to, one of her classes goes to Shane.
Correct, AP English, obviously, Shane Santisa. Mr. Peter?
And there's other things that could happen too, where she talked about combining, there'd be 2 sections of Spanish 1 possibly. She could combine that into one larger class possibly. There's no Spanish 3 signed up yet, right?
Correct.
There could be a couple. There's some other options with that. Some of us schools have taught other classes. Remember that Boost Consortium that we were doing? So there's some Spanish teachers that could maybe, those higher levels, a couple of our kids could just tie into that. So you have to put things together, you could still come up with a good program. It just would be hybrid, a different kind of a thing. But I think the key is to have a good teacher instead of, I don't know, no good way to say this, but I don't know how many real top Spanish teachers are on the market that we could get looking for half-time work kind of a thing. There's, if they're not employed. So that's what I expect to happen, so.
Can we hire a full-time one? Why are we always talking about 50% one?
Then let her go.
Well, and I think this is great discussion. We just have to be careful of what we're talking about in the public meeting here. I mean, we can't negotiate her position or decide her fate.
Right.
So, I mean, I
No.
just want.
But I'm asking, like,
Yeah, but I'm not saying because you brought it up, I just want to cut things out before we get too far down the road here and
Right.
say too much, but yes, I think that's a legitimate
is that
question.
another option, is what I'm
It
asking?
is, yes, that is an option.
Or if you do this one time, are you opening yourself up to other people wanting
Right.
to do something similar, maybe at the end of their career where they'll say, I don't want to work half time, and then the offering benefits to 2 people. You get one position done.
But the benefit costs will be prorated, so it'll be the same cost to the budget. We're just gonna look.
I guess my question is, when do you need to know this, so you have to post something?
Posting
Probably
something,
like to know something by tomorrow, right?
well, we're kind of informing, but we're gonna post for halftime at first, see what we have. If this didn't work out,
How long is that posting period?
Usually we try to do it for 2 weeks and see what we get. A lot of times we put it on until filled. So I just know, like, for example, when we needed someone for long-term sub in there. And we had it posted for months,
But that was also during COVID.
yes. And it wasn't a full-time, it wasn't it was just a sub thing, but,
Right.
you go on, it's called weekend, we use our weekend for all our, employment needs, and if you go on there, and there's just so few and far between available.
All right, so let me ask this question. Let's say that doesn't work, okay?
That was,
Getting someone in here
What
50%.
what do you want to do for 50%? You don't get that, okay? So I'm assuming by that time, you're gonna come back to us and say, we have 2 options available. And then at that point, you're already gonna be in, either we're gonna have to call a special board meeting for that, or we're gonna be waiting till July 14th to talk about that, and we're really close to trying to find somebody. If that's the case.
Well, we have that meeting 22nd.
The 22nd is a Tuesday, so if you post tomorrow, that's not your full 2 weeks, if that's what you're looking for.
You might have some numbers if there isn't
Well, I
any.
mean, it's,
I'm just saying, if you're wanting a full 2 weeks, that's not quite, you're
No,
2
it's-
days short of the 2 full weeks, you actually post it tomorrow.
we probably have to go with that.
I'm fine with what you're proposing, I just don't know, like you said, I don't know how well that's going to work.
And that'll be an executive session then added on to that meeting. Yeah, I know we should post it, we should, plan on discussing in detail on Tuesday, the 22nd then. And I would just say, just because, we have to do something that's different, and just because it's different doesn't mean it can't be effective, but we need to then bring a little bit more detail on how exactly it would work.
Yeah.
And there's some other things, I've got to check on just the amount of minutes, hours of instruction to get credit with a certified teacher, because if they're only there part of the time, can the other people be under the direction? Can it be a hybrid? Can it count like we kind of did this year? Or if that's not going to work, then we can't even do it.
Right.
Because if we can't get
Okay,
the teacher that the other, if that doesn't count for anything, then it's not going to
For
work.
our students.
Well, you can't get credit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one, they,
The
one
kids need
can get
credit.
credit, the price is the same, so.
unfortunately, there is no perfect solution. Right, so we'll do the best we can and try to get it accomplished for next fall.
Sounds good.
Any questions for me, other ones?
Bryce, you're up.
Okay. Just have 2 things on this report. One thing is I wrote for a grant, a transition grant for $25,000 to get a van to transport special education kids to transition activities. Also, plan to have 1 student going to Project Search in Platteville. We provide transportation. The kids that are in early childhood that would go to Iowa Grant, if we could coordinate that, if we would get this grant, we would have a chance to drive the kids. You wouldn't have to have the route from Warco, and this would have to have a wheelchair lift in. But we can't get, I'm sure we can't get a good enough van for $25,000 with a wheelchair lift, so it will be $25,000 in grant money and maybe $15,000 in district money. We save money on transportation over time. And we won't know until July 1st, whether we get this or not. So that's just kind of informational. The other thing I wanted to talk about and get a little bit of feedback from the board. Earlier in the spring, there was a lot of school district talk between principals and administrators about in the fall, when we're back in school, the talk is, we don't want our teachers to have to teach kids in the classroom and then virtual at home. So for the kids and the parents that are not comfortable coming to school, the discussion is, we would contract that out, or we would pay for classes. We don't want them to go to a virtual school, like sign up for McFarland Virtual Academy or some other academy like that. With that, so anticipation is that there'll be some families that still aren't comfortable coming into school. So there are options. Because Wisconsin Virtual School, it's been around for 20 years. That's where you would pay for, the district would pay for the courses for the kids, but we keep the student count and keep our $12,800 revenue. But I've talked to some other districts, and there's people I know throughout the state, and the one school in particular said, well, we stopped that. We brought everybody back at the end of Easter or spring break. We're back in school, or 100% back in. We don't offer the virtual option. So one of our fears is, so we have a couple things. We have the kids that are actually, they're not comfortable, or maybe they have some high needs, some special medical needs, and they're not going to come into school. We could lose those kids to a virtual school, so we lose the funding. And we lose the kid, or maybe they don't come back. But the other thing is, we also have people that will sign up for that option, like people that signed up and they just did it because they didn't have to come to school for convenience, for they don't like school, or a lot of those kids didn't do very well. So, part of me wants to advise and say, let's just say we don't have this option. We just go back in school. We don't have virtual, but we have other considerations. We're going to have some kids are still getting COVID. I mean, it's around, so there'll be some people that have something or have to be quarantined. If you say, we don't have an option unless you're quarantined or you have it, are we going to allow them to Zoom into the classroom like they did this year, the ones that are COVID related? Or do we just have them make it up? Like the whole days, if you missed 10 days of school, you just did your homework. And so those are, you don't have to answer tonight, but I'm just trying to, that's something we have to make a decision on as we start school, which way it's going to go. And there's 10 weeks, or at least 8 weeks before we have to maybe make final decisions. And a lot of things have changed in the last 2 months, but.
Chris, I know you said earlier, something about maybe for that option that you're talking about through CISA.
Yeah.
Was that discussed any further through CISA?
Well, CISA 9 has it. We've had it for years. So it's on a website. It's Wisconsin Virtual School, and we've got prices, and we've even got a K through 5 option. Because we've had some other families ask about that also. Because you can enroll for a couple classes a year if you're homeschooled, in school. So they can take some classes in school and out of school. Just trying to maintain education for kids. We're also trying to keep people connected here. And we also don't want the disruption for, teachers are teaching to the kids in the classroom, and there's 3 kids that are on computers still, and it just was a long year, and if we could just get things as close to the way they were before. However, there's just a lot of, just because we went through last year with the way we taught, there's a lot of things that have come up. So people, both schools I was in, the same thing. People will go on vacation, that we say, I'm going to be virtual this week. I'm going to go with my dad, and we'll be in Appleton for the week, and I just want to Zoom in. And it's not COVID related. And then, so we didn't allow that, and there's both sides of this. So we have the technology. So is it the right thing to say, no, we're not going to do that? Or people are sick, or they're just not COVID sick, but they're sick. Should we let them, or they're coming from a surgery, should we let them Zoom in? Is that the best way to learn? Or should we say, no, we're not going to do that, it's too disruptive, it's too hard on the staff? Or because you have the technology, should we allow it? But then where do you stop that? Because people will always take advantage of that. So it's kind of, it's something you have to wrestle with a little bit.
But we are ultimately a public school. The idea is that we do in school. That's what we are. right? And shouldn't we stand behind that
Well,
a
there's-
little bit?
Well, there's public virtual.
Well, right, so they could enlist anywhere.
Yeah, but there's public, we could have a virtual branch, you know.
Right, but wouldn't that mean then we'd have to like hire other teachers and do a whole, I mean, that'd be a whole virtual teaching staff versus a in-school staff? So, I mean, that'd be,
You could get is, yeah.
but so what I'm
exactly.
saying, like, if, I understand why we're having this conversation, obviously, but, I mean, we are an in-school, that's what we've
We're
always
face to face
been.
and then.
Right, we've always been face-to-face. Yes, COVID is still a thing, but, I mean, shouldn't we ultimately still be standing behind our roots, I guess, if that's a good word for this? I don't even know.
I think,
And I think we are, Katrina, I think the question is, if there's people that are gonna choose to do virtual,
Then will
do we give them an option to do it through our schools, so they still are
but
considered
not
our
in our
students?
classrooms.
But not in our classrooms,
Right,
right?
I mean,
I think doing
That's
it
the
in the
biggest
classroom
question, correct?
is kind of off the table, right, Bryce? As far as having teachers do both,
yeah, we want to do a better job.
The teachers don't want that.
no, and I
Just
don't
so-
think we should ask.
Now, we still
that.
have to do, if someone gets quarantined, you know, do we
Well,
do
but then-
that then to come in virtually, or, hey,
Or like
it's
Bryce
just like
said-
you're sick, you
Yeah.
get your homework, you're out, when you come back, you come back.
And is there a difference? Go ahead.
I guess to that option, if somebody does get quarantined again, is there any reason why they can't record the lesson that they're teaching that day and the kid can log on and watch the lesson? It doesn't have to be, he or she doesn't have to be virtual in the room, but they can log on, it's recorded, and they can watch the lesson that day.
And I think that's what I was
Something
gonna
like
say too, Kenny, is you can have like a passive instead of an interactive one, where they could zoom into the classroom, but the teacher's not teaching them online. They're just sitting outside the window, looking through the window, right? They're not interactive, but
Well,
they
they
can
could-
view the class and hear the lecture but the teachers don't have
That's
to
a good point.
worry about them and
I think,
check on them and
I
ask
think
them.
that accomplishes what we're talking about, is that the teachers focus on the kids in front of them. You know, and then those situations where they're absent, and then we could say we're not offering the virtual. Or if we did offer it, we would contract out. And we could get, okay, you log in, say it's through CISA 9, so it's all online, and you coordinate with them, and we'll pay the cost, you go on our roll. And they've been doing it for a long time, so they would share, you know, how they take attendance, and there's some different things, but.
But if it's illnesses is where the biggest issue comes from. Not just, so what you're talking about is if you are just gonna go virtual.
Yes.
Like, a student just wants to be virtual. So now what though is the conversation in regards to someone has COVID or they're sick,
I think that,
literally sick? What's the synopsis to say we record the lessons?
Right, that's the,
Yeah.
kind of the question is, what do we offer them?
Right, I would say that, to me, that'd be the best option.
Because then they don't even have to really be like, so let's say they are sick, I mean, they really are sick. Lesson kid wants to do anyway. I myself is sit and listen to my teacher talk right now. I'm gonna do that later. So then, yeah, I'll listen to the lesson later, do the homework, get my homework caught up, and take care of my grade. Get it up, just like if you were sick.
or take a vacation.
Yeah, you take a vacation. I'm just trying to think this out loud.
So if we did something like the CISA, is that per kid we pay a fee or
Per
per
course,
grade,
yeah.
per course?
Because it's elementary, that's you know, student-based, right? And then, or
Yeah.
at this level, you're taking Algebra 2, for example,
Right.
Yeah, it's like $300,
right? 270, I think, was it 270, just price one out here for a animal.
But then that student, another question in regards to if we have a virtual student, okay, but then they can still participate in our
Yes.
activities here?
there are students.
Still our student,
Okay.
no different than a homeschool kid can still participate.
Right, in athletics and so on and
Well,
so
they're
forth.
not
Okay, that's,
So the thing that's different, this going into next year is having a lesson, kids in front of you, kids at home at the same time, all live.
right.
We don't want to do that. We don't want the teachers to do that. We think the teachers do a better job. There'll be a few exceptions. We'll contract that out to a third party to keep the kids. And then kids that are sick, quarantine, if you have an option to record a lesson, that's a good option. I don't know what that takes for setup or how that is done.
It's not, yeah, we can get that done. I think the biggest thing to get around, I just don't want to count those absent days for those kids that are quarantined now, through no fault of their own.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you get 10 absences a school year, 5 a semester, so, and so let's say I'm a student, I get quarantined, I have to, possibly 10 days, right? I want to count that against my absences, so, is there a way I can stay current in class and not lose my absences? As Mike said, if we report, we can get it. Now, it's a little more difficult for a teacher, yes, however, that kid's not out in left field now, missing everything. The other issue though is the ones that aren't quarantined, but you don't know, right? I was sitting next to Brent. Brent's got it. Do I have it? Do I have to be quarantined? Or I have a symptom or two, right? This year, if you have a symptom or 2 symptoms, you're out until you get tested, right? So Iowa County is doing fighting, and Bartman, you can help me out, is trying to get tests in schools, right? Test kits. That was the last talk that we had at the last principals meeting, but if they would get test kits in the school before school starts this fall, boy, that'll be huge as far as, okay, you have a couple of kids you tested right now, do they have to go home or not? Because that was a big.
So who sticks that up? So I'm up there, Barb?
Depends who the kid is, if I don't like it, no. That's what I mean, no.
Oh,
Because doesn't Mr. I think his name. Oh, teacher.
Stan?
Doesn't he already do a lot of recording already?
Yeah, he records everything now, yeah. You can't see him, but
You can't see him, but you can physically see him, hear him, and what he's doing
you
on the
can
way.
watch everything he does, yeah.
Yeah.
He's had it done for years, so. So, I mean, it's not, I don't think a big, I can't speak for Brad as far as technology wise, but I can't see it being a real big issue getting a lesson recorded. Every teacher has the ability to do that. They've
Yeah,
done that now.
I thought they had the iPad.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
So
They
it's
have
not,
all of it
right.
available to them.
It's obviously gonna be hard for kids, they can't ask questions, they have to.
Well, they
be
can.
able to-
They just have to do it the old school way, which is when you get back into school, you ask the teacher or you email them when you're feeling better and you get it taken care of.
right.
Hard knocks of life.
So I guess the question is, what we want to think about is, do we want to give families a virtual option or say we're not doing that? Because
I think
we don't need to.
would we be completely foolish to do that?
Or are we gonna lose people if we don't give up?
But either way around.
No, I'm saying, yeah, we have to give them the option
Right,
because
right.
otherwise we lose children.
Right.
And them coming here.
I think there's a
We could-
difference between providing the option and promoting the option too.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to
Promote it.
really put out there and promote that we have this virtual option available for people, but, I mean, we have
But
to
I
make
can't-
it known, but we
Right.
don't have to promote it
We
either.
just don't, to make sure people don't take advantage of the system.
Right.
I mean, is the ultimate
That's
our
hard
goals
to do.
here.
You get a parent calls in, tells you one thing, something else happened, but it is what it is.
Any questions?
So I would look into those options just so you know what the best one would be if we were gonna contract out. It sounds like CISA-9 might be the way to go, but to kind of formalize that and then talk to the teachers about how to, offer that either recording or
Lessons.
I suppose it could be live as well, just not interactive. That
Yeah,
would be a nice way of,
so, hey, you can tune in, you can listen, but I can't, you're watching. I'm focusing on the kids here, so listen, pick it up, and then email me questions.
and as much as you don't want to plan for it, I think we still need to have some plan B or C in case we do end up virtual again as a school for a couple weeks, or it's just such an unknown, but you learned a lot of lessons this year just to not follow through on those and figure out if there's better ways of doing it if we have to do it.
Yeah, we're still gonna have all the technology in each
Yeah.
classroom, because if we have to go, we're obviously gonna be ready, but obviously we're taking on the virtual Fridays.
Yeah, good.
So I don't think we need those anymore, we'll go back to the late start Wednesdays, but
Is live really, I'm just asking, is live really needed? I mean, if the kid ultimate goal is if they're not here, they're sick. They're sick because they have COVID or because they're just like really sick. People get sick still. So they're not here. Do we have to have the live option? That's my question. Like it should be this or this. Like
I'm just wondering if it's not as
Because-
easy to do the live option if you're recording it anyway, whether it's any harder to
Okay,
stream it.
Well,
or
if
it's
you're
harder
doing
to
live,
record
are
it
you
and
already
provide
recording?
it.
So what does it matter? Is that what you're
I don't
saying?
know if everybody's recording, but I think, yeah, to your question, it depends how long they're out. If you're sick for a day and probably not gonna do anything, you're just gonna catch you sick. Next day you would catch up. If you're out for 5 days, then you might wanna review recordings when you feel better, like you said.
Right, well,
Yeah, I
I'm
think the
just saying
recording
live
would be
doesn't
great,
seem as important as just recording them.
Correct.
Then
I
that
would
way the
say.
student can just look back at them when they're feeling better. Because ideally we want them in school. Have we yet decided on regards to like if it's gonna be recommended or required for masks for next year?
Or is it
That's a
no?
question.
It sure is nice today, without having a mask on.
I mean, hopefully things go well, summer school goes well, that'll be our next, I want to see.
Will that be at the July meeting then?
We'll be
Most
on the-
likely that'll be
Yeah, we'll put that
discussed.
on the agenda for sure. Like I said, maybe things change, but if they're going to where we hope they're going now,
I think maybe even talk about in July, but I mean, still another month till the August meeting. Things change so much. There's some stuff out there too that, for these webinars, talk about your reentry plan to school. In June, I think it's too early. I mean, a lot of people, you hear it several times, so you're organized, but hopefully it just keeps going down and down, and then they keep promoting the vaccination to try to get to that certain amount of vaccine, but
it's not, obviously we have families that, we have a couple of kids that came to summer school that weren't masks, which is fine. I did take a call from a family that was very upset that we lifted it, we knew that, we're gonna have families in that area, so.
Right.
But in my opinion, it's definitely something I think we're moving in the right direction, that we can make them optional as well. It's our goal. No, great questions.
I might be on both agendas, both of them.
Right.
Perfect.
Barbie,
That's all I
I
got.
got down. Mask update next month, please.
Does one of you want to go through the nurses report? Or is that an attachment that everybody has?
I would rather.
Attachment. Busier for the nurse, busier for Barb because the other 3 days a week, Barb gets, she's the main one. Puts on the beekeeper outfit it used to be. Go in and work with kids and contact people, a lot of contacting. And there's still a lot of things where sometimes you find out that kids had symptoms or parents had symptoms or parents, they sent them anyway. And this was a very difficult year.
All right, then we'll move on to new business. We covered the senior project proposal, so we're on the senior class picture display.
Yeah, it was brought to my attention that there's some interest in hanging the senior pictures back up. At least the most recent ones, or maybe the ones from since the school was built, I believe, so. I thought I'd put on there for discussion piece, if that's something that you guys want to put back up, we can do that, I guess. So,
Why'd they get taken down?
we took them down because, one, we wanted to paint, and then we put that red striper on there, and they were all, one was facing this one, one was facing this one, it just looked bad, and we're running out of room. So, if we did put them back up, I'd like to do something more, so they're more uniform. I would love it where every picture is the same size, that's a lot, obviously, a lot of work, a lot of time, but if that's something that the board feels you guys want to get back up there, we can definitely, we know where they're at, so we can get them back here.
And I think one of the things at the time they were taken down actually was, there was a thought that we were gonna get them scanned in and have them on like a video display or something that they could be running, and
Right.
with where they're at up high, you'd have good eyes to see what was going on there, but that didn't ever quite get done either.
Well, we got them all scanned.
But we just don't have a
On the
display.
webpage, but we don't have a key, I think we call it kiosk. We call it
Right.
kiosk. That's the part where,
Well, they're
it
on
was a project of a kid, actually, they did a great job, they got them all, I mean, it's a lot of work, they scanned them all, got them in there. You know, and he did his, but the kiosk part is not
The
very,
kiosk part that was a big expense.
it was, not like 16, 20,000.
Yeah.
And they got them fancy now where you can go back to whatever year you want, you can click on that person's space and then bring up and tell you, you know, their live, family, year they died, all of it, which is really cool, but I don't know how elaborate you wanna get.
I do think it was a very nice thing that we had here when we had it. It, you know, it gotten a little disorganized and we started running out of room as well, but I think if there's a way to get it back and redisplay those, it'd be good to do.
We moved in what, 2005?
Here.
Yeah.
96.
96. 2005 is elementary school.
So you're talking about
25 years.
all of them, or just back to this school, when the school started?
No, basically what brought to me, my attention was they'd like to see at least the graduating classes from this school. Not the old high school, but this school.
I don't know, my opinion, if you're gonna do it, I don't know, it seems like when we had them up, they were more intrigued about the older ones than
They
the
were.
more.
Well, that's it, that's the people that are asking about it are more interested about their time frame than they are if they were, you know, my time. So,
Well, and I know it's not as easy as just saying, let's bring them back up here and hang them up, because that isn't, it's easier said than done, right? So I mean, it's gonna take a little work planning and trying to figure out a good way of doing that.
allocation for them, if that's decided upon.
So talking about the kiosk thing though, that was, you look up something and it would display on the screen?
Yeah, so basically, there's been I've been to a couple schools where, you can walk up to a kiosk and you can flip through it digitally by year. And it has every student's picture on there. Like Josh said, some has even got a little bio on them. Otherwise, you know, if you, I remember going to Walmart where they used to have the poster flipper, they have that option, you do.
Seen that in colleges too, yeah, you just got one big spot that you flip through.
Yeah,
Most
you're
you flip
hitting-
it to the next slide.
You're hitting rack after rack just to find the year you wanna go to, but, you know, there's that. Yeah, but there's those options out there, but because when we looked into it, was the kiosk was somewhere between $16,000-$17,000 just for that portion.
Couldn't that just be like a slideshow by graduating year? Maybe we do a PowerPoint, I mean,
But they have video picture frames now that,
isn't there, maybe if we research that, maybe we could do something like that, maybe it's not as expensive. If there's other things
Isn't
that,
there something called legacy? It's like a legacy memory box or something. It's some sort of online program and you send them all of your pictures and then they put them into a slideshow.
and like Josh said, we've already got them electronically. We just don't have a display for them.
yeah, that's a good
So what about our IT
That would be
guy?
another, but that,
But we don't have anything to display them on.
The screen, right, but you could do that. I mean, if you-
Like a Mac is just, it's just hang, you know, touchscreen computer on the wall.
Yeah.
That was actually,
yeah, when you see my school, it's a regular full size, I mean, it's a,
like full
Hey,
size,
just
Main
need a
Street,
TV.
you know, like
Yeah.
where he's
yeah,
at.
it's full size
Yeah.
TV.
I mean, the reason schools do that, obviously, is
It's a more
because,
cheaper option.
well, yeah, plus there's, you know, you're getting so many, you're taking up all the wall space. And ours, you know, right now, ours is all the way around, it would be all around the back, and around the side,
And
so we'd be
also
almost
more
out of the
efficient.
county now, so.
Yeah.
So
And I do
that's,
think that's still a good option because those you can see so much better too.
what's that?
If you had it on a monitor or a screen that you could walk
Yeah.
right up to
Yeah.
it instead of trying to read.
Good job.
Especially for the
You
elderly.
think that would suffice, Kenny, if we did it? Yes.
I think if you did something like that, it wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't have to be a kiosk, it would be something like you put it on, you know.
A PowerPoint.
Yeah, so you do like Brent said, maybe you have the touchpad connected to the TV and you go up and hit 1965 and boom, there it is. Or 66, or you can take your finger and flip back and forth between the
Couldn't
last
you
years.
just put that on our website?
Well, it's currently on our
You
website,
could
you just have to
do
go to the
it
alumni
anyway.
page to click on it.
Once
can
you
look
have
at
it, you can do it anyway.
it's on our website now. I was looking at it the other day. There's a
Our
couple,
pictures?
Our class pictures are on the website. You have to go under alumni and they're all there.
but there's a year that wasn't, like 82 or
I think
something.
there's 2 years that were listed already. Maybe those classes, they graduated much earlier.
Must have been some slackers in there. But, you know, that's,
I mean, well, if you had our, I mean, are we bringing them back or are we? looking
Yeah,
at-
we
well, I
wanna
think,
bring
I think
them
it
back.
takes more discussion than us four to say, or us five to say, this is what it's going to be, but I think there's further discussion because I think there's, obviously, there's more options out there than now just hanging the picture back up. You got the kiosk, you got TV, you got parking, you got all kinds of stuff you can do. What is the most realistic, time sensitive, money management way we can do it? Because I guarantee if you take this year's class all the way back to whatever the year was that we started, it would be a lot of time involved hanging every picture back up. And I guarantee you, you could well pay for the TV and iPad in a short period amount of time,
With someone's time.
or in someone's time doing it. You have money left over.
Right, I mean, I've seen it like Sunbury, for example. They have them down, obviously it's a huge school, so they have a lot of hallway space, but every frame is the exact same, right? And the classes got getting bigger and bigger, so the first ones, the pictures were, by the time you get, you gotta have some, I mean, it's just a little, you got, 1,000 kids to see the class. But it's all uniform, it's all really nice, where ours was, it's nice to have, don't get me wrong, it just didn't look nice as far as the layout.
But yeah, my opinion,
I like the
if
electric.
somebody had to make me decide today, I'd say TV and an iPad, you go, that's what you get. It's still on display.
And we can do, I always talk about, hey, we have the last, I said, hey, let's do the last 10 years of all the time.
And
We just rotate them out,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
picture, so we have one spot for the last 10 years all the time.
And I mentioned that too. I said, we talked about the last 5 or 10 years. And you bring one on, you drop one off.
Right. And then start with studies been great, store them for us and hang them up, so.
So yeah, that could be further
So,
discussion.
yeah, I say we'll bring that back and
So
come up
that's
with some
probably gonna be,
plans. I'll have Bradley look at some different kiosk things, 2 options or different options that I'm sure he's got some ideas too that would work tech wise.
Something like a step project.
Oh.
I was leaving SCP for next fall.
Kids will be watching that, see the late tournament on
Gauge,
that.
okay.
We should put a,
Why wouldn't you?
buy a camera in the historical society to zoom in on.
That's what we'll do. Here's the video, the surface act, just follow that, follow the wall.
Have the second graders do the program.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
So, more to come on that then.
Yeah, we're done. Budget update, Bryce.
Okay, this is just be very general. In 2 weeks, we'll have specifics. But there's 2 parts of this. So the year-end budget, we spent down as many things as we could and tried to take care of as many projects that we get done this year. And we still, the estimate is $250,000 that we'll have to put in either Fund 46, for future projects. And this will be our 3rd year putting in it, so it's still 2 more years before we can touch that money or put some into fund balance. So 250 to 275,000, and some of that is because we didn't spend money in some areas. Travel and field trips didn't do as much in certain areas. We still saved some in transportation, and we settled up. I think it was 20 days. We paid for virtual days, and then we had like 13 more, and Warco for transportation didn't charge. A couple of days when we closed, we didn't have any school, we just closed down before we started to go that stretch in November. And so they didn't charge us for those 2 days, and that's, what that was for is, if it was virtual, we paid the bus company 80%. But those 33 days that we didn't have school, we didn't use the fuel. So it's just a bunch of little things that added up that we didn't spend in our budget. So, even though there's money that we haven't had to spend, it doesn't mean like another year, a more normal year, we're gonna be spending in some of those areas. However, it went the other way too, is we didn't charge for admission in a lot of our sports. We're down maybe 8,000, 8 to 10,000 on revenues, things like that. So it's just an unusual year to go forward with. A lot of years, you look at what's left over and you kind of figure that, a normal year, I mean, that we're that much money to the good. It may or may not be the case. For next year, we got about 40,000. We did get 40,000 for ESSER 1, the CARES money or ESSER 1. So we have 12,000 of that left over. We spent some of that on the hotspots so people could get internet connection. We spent some on that on cleaning, some on labor, different things related to COVID. Our ESSER 2 funds, we know what they are. They're 101,809. That's going forward to next year. ESSER 2 is still a little bit unclear, but earlier guidance on that ESSER 3 is a little bit unclear. But earlier on, they were saying ESSER 3 is about twice as what your ESSER 2 is. So that would give us more money going forward, but they're still trying to decide part of that, how it's going to be distributed. So for this year, we'll have to decide how much money goes into fund balance and how much money goes into Fund 46. And part of that calculation, we'll decide for sure in July, but we want to see how much money we spent that we get aided on. We want to keep the aided amount that we spend. Some money we spend, we don't get aided on. If we get money from a federal grant, like a Title I grant, if we get money from special ed IDEA funds, some of those grants, some of those things where it's not, they call it like local cost sharing money, we don't get aided on that. The ESSER funds that we spend, if you replace a lot of the spending with ESSER money, and you just save that money, which you can do, but you don't get aided on it, what that means is you'll have less aid, so your taxes will be higher next year. So we want to kind of, depending on how we split that out, will be depending on what our projected aid will be. And that's probably how we're going to determine how much will go in each one. We're trying to keep the taxes just even if we can. And in reality, your taxes might go up and down, but people don't remember when they go down. They just remember that the next year if they go up, that your taxes got raised. So it's good if we could do that. Just editorial about this Fund 46. So since we can't use the money for a couple of years, we have to be careful how we do that. But in the future, what's really sweet about that is, how we're trying to make sure the roof is done before the end of June, and we want the blacktop to be done, these bigger items, so we can actually get closed out on this year. Once you get past the 5 years with that Fund 46, you can actually, they could do it in August, they could do it in September. You can just put the money in now, and you can just use the money later on, and you get aided now, and it just takes all that away. So that's a real benefit. You could put more in there and get generate higher aid, but you don't have to try to rush everything to get the June 30th. So that's good. The other things that are up in the air, though, is going forward for next year. So what the Finance Committee or the people at the Capitol, when they passed first round of the budget, that the governor says he's going to veto, but they did not give us an increase per student. We had factored in 150,000 per student. So 300 students approximately, that's $45,000 less revenue that we would receive just from, that's the main part that affects us. They did give slight increases on special ed reimbursement, but the governor came out with $200 per student increase like we had the last 2 years. roughly. And so what I did is put things on 150 just to be more conservative. Well, they say they're not going to give that because we have all this federal money. Highland is one of the schools that didn't get as much federal money as other schools. That's because we're not as high poverty as some of the area schools, but also there's a question on how much of this you can actually just use for general operating expenses. There's also a clause that says if you don't use enough of this, you just can't exchange it for your operating expenses. That's not what it's for. You won't get the money. In the meantime, just a couple of days ago, they're saying that now there's $4.4 billion more dollars in Wisconsin state income tax, income or receipts. They're going to collect 4.4 more billion than they thought. So they voted it down. Now all of a sudden there's more money. No, they're getting close to the end. And so we don't know. Darling, Alberta Darling, she's I know her position, but she's a Republican, but now she's saying put more money into, put $350 million in. I don't know what that gives us per pupil, but there's going to be a fight over this, and the governor, I think, I'm not sure the powers of how the veto works with that, but so it's up in the air. But the main thing for us for next year would be, as it stands, it'd be 45,000 less. I think we can absorb that, and it depends how we pay for the new teacher. We have one option is using some of the extra money because it would qualify, so we could pay for the new teacher, the new section of the first grade with that money, or we could use, we're going to have more revenue because we paid off the unfunded pension liability, so it's like 65 or 66,000 that is freed up to go to regular Fund 10 expenses. So the summary is we're finishing out the year good. Next year's still up in the air, and we have some temporary money for a couple of years that can help hold us up in some areas, but long term, as we want to add staff or as salaries and benefits and utilities, those fixed costs go up, the revenue has to go up, at least tracking that. It's kind of frustrating that it just seems like that's always a fight every year, and I don't know why. Like Howard Markline, I've talked to that guy at different times, and I don't know why they have to keep taking stuff away. And I always would explain, I've testified a couple times, that it's not just the cost of living. We have to keep adding different requirements. Kids have different needs. A few families move in or something happens, you have to send kids to special programs. It's not anybody's fault. It's just the way it is. And that's not a cost of living. Cost of living is, your health insurance goes up, your property insurance goes up, utilities go up, salaries go up a little bit. Whatever, you have to replace some furniture. It's not, but we always have this extra stuff, and it's not to factor that in, but somehow you keep getting through year by year, but it just seems like sometime it's going to come to a point, and that's a lot of times that's when you go to your community event, and then they generally support you to raise taxes, but it's kind of like at the state level, if they would raise taxes, then it wouldn't fall on the community. They're still raising taxes, it's just the local people have to do it. And sometimes that's with a fight, and sometimes if they think we're doing a good job, I think we're being smart with the money, and they get a good product for what we're doing, and get a good outcome. And it works out pretty well, but otherwise it's a fight and it's hard. When referendums fail and things happen, you start laying people off. People start pointing fingers at what program is good, and why does she have to go? He should go before her, and so that's tough times. So hope we don't have to get to that. But maybe things will sort out. The bad thing is, you have to plan for your staff, your insurance. You have to commit to your insurance. We even gave raises. I guess you could make it a habit of, you can do raises in the fall when the budgets are set, that people want to know. It's like it's backwards, you've got to commit to your whole operation before you know how much money there is, and people don't. Let's say, why don't you just, you gotta stay within your budget, well, we guess how much money we're gonna have in the fall. We estimate that, and then we try to make everything fit, and then we hope.
So that's the one thing I never got. Ours, fiscal year ends in June. They can't make up their mind till October.
Right.
So, no wonder this doesn't work.
So like, I've heard in Iowa, it's based on the same things, but it's a year ahead. Like Iowa, in January, you know what your next year's budget is. It's a year, it's the same factors, but it's a year ahead. So at least you know what that is in the spring of the year going into next year. So if you knew it was a lot different, if you had to adjust staff, or you couldn't take on any more staff, you just wouldn't do it because you know. Here we think we know, and then something could change, So anyway, that's what we are up against. So the good thing is how we're operating is there's a lot of things, and you guys said it earlier on. Hoy was talking about, we may have money in the spring. If things go well, we've got, things positioned. If they don't go well, that money won't be available, but if it does go well, then we could commit to maybe new lockers, so that's a good way to run it. Take care of stuff, and then if there's money, you do some things as you have money at the end of the year. Then, so on the 22nd, we'll show some of the spend on, we'll show exactly what we think it's gonna be with even salaries for summer school, and but it's looking like we'll have money to split in both areas, and last year we had 92,000, we're gonna have all of that, which is okay.
Sounds good. Does anybody have any other questions on that? Otherwise, we'll.
I have one question, because I don't quite know what it all means. So when we are talking about the Chloe situation with the bathrooms, or with the locker rooms, we have to wait till we know, even though we kind of already know we're gonna have a little extra?
But it's because, well, here's how I would say to do it is.
I just don't know.
I would say we would prioritize, Alicia explains the bathroom stalls, I think let's get that, that's a priority, they don't need to go through that. They would also move the lockers probably by the time school starts, but lockers are expensive, so if it's 30,000 to put in new lockers, I'm just throwing a number out, 30,000, we probably won't commit to that, new lockers until there's money left over in the spring, then that's one thing, okay, get the lockers in. And they, because if it goes the other way, for whatever reason, you don't have to get new lockers.
Right.
You can
It's
get
not a
hooks,
necessity.
but
If something else comes up.
But I agree with, this is like being older, it's like, you never left anything, you locked everything up. Went to Fayette and locked it, going to Fayette, coming back, unlocked it again. It was like, why would you ever leave anything unlocked?
And you didn't have a cell phone back then.
No.
Right.
But it just.
Or an expensive watch or anything else that's in your backpack that somebody might want to heist.
That's $3 in your pocket.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was just curious how, I didn't know like how you put all of that from 1 year to.
But it's, you just kind of keep some of those are more higher priority and some would be, you want to do it, but we'll do it when we have money. Just like, it's kind of funny, but this, we priced this indoor concession stand, and actually we could pay for that, but I don't know, it's just, we never had, I just don't know how that fits in, and to be responsible to the public and everything, I think you have to watch how you spend, because pretty soon you're spending on stuff, and then pretty soon you're out of money, it's perceived like you're out of money, and now we need you to give us more money, and it's critical how we do that.
Sure. Nothing more comes to mind.
Okay, well, that's fine. Next item is approving the WIA membership.
This is just every
Some
year to be
every
members.
year.
Yeah. You have to sign, I think, the board member.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
Can you explain to me the difference between non-contact co-op and a contact co-op?
I think it's, I saw the same thing. I'm pretty sure that it is, Iowa Grant is the school of the contact.
Gotcha,
We added on to
or
that.
the second.
So I look at that as like, how can Rusty be
Contact
non-contact?
sports, non-contact.
Sure, wrestling's a contact sport.
Yeah. That was a motion by Esser and a second by Schimick to approve the WIA membership. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item then is under personnel, approve the 2021, 2022 extracurricular assignments, and those are posted there for you, and for the most part, there aren't a lot of changes.
No.
On there are a few vacancies.
Yeah, just a couple, we're still looking for a volleyball, assistant volleyball, and, middle school volleyball as well, so.
These amounts increased 1.23%, which was the CPI number for July 1st. So the other salaries were basically 2% across the board, but these were based on cost of living factor for people in this sector. So it didn't increase as quite as high as the regular salaries. Does that make sense? 1.23. Last year, I think it was slightly higher.
One correction that I do need to make too is Jessica Weber's, forensics.
That'd be open.
That'd be open for right now. I think I have first until I just gotta lock him in here, but I want to leave it open for right now in case, changes.
So that should be an open.
Correct.
Okay.
Should you make that note, please, for me, Barbie?
I have a motion by Drury and a second by Yeager to approve the extracurricular assignments with the change for forensics as an open. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is a teacher resignation.
Yes, Megan, Belknap, Miss Hebe, we call her, has taken a position and is, gonna be leaving us after 2 years, so we want to, she sent an official letter, got a job, a closer to home, so we want to wish her well. And, that'll be open now.
I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion by Esther and a second by Drury to accept the teacher resignation. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And then a support staff resignation.
Yeah, Dean Jenkins, one of our custodians, his 2-week notice, so his last day, pending the approval will be Friday, so, we'll be looking for a full-time custodian.
I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion by Esther and a second by Drury to approve the support staff resignation. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And then the 8th grade advisor,
Same situation ran in, I don't know the name of, so did the job, for whatever reason, we didn't have a contract for it this year, we just need to get a retroactive contract, so the contract matches the pay and it's all done, it's not for next year, it's this past year.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Schimick and a second by Jaeger to approve the 2020-2021 eighth grade advisor position. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next board meeting is June 22nd,
Was that a 5:30 start or was that
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock? Then we'll have that. What's a board meeting, so we can have whatever comes up, but it's primarily to go through the year end a little bit more detail, and then we'll have that executive session to talk about the discussion we had earlier.
And that'd be a closed session, is that what you?
Yeah.
And then committee meetings, nothing before?
No, I mean, we kind of did this in lieu of having 2 meetings.
Okay.
So just before we close then, were you guys able to work something out with the roof then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually rolling next week.
Maybe next week.
Right, I think we start next week like that.
Mike said he was holding on blacktop resurfacing until baseball is done. And then whenever, Barbara said if we win, then we travel. That would be any time now.
Motion to adjourn. Motion by Drury, a second by Jaeger to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for coming. Barb, you got stuff for me to sign probably. The other thing is if you could leave any of your timesheets that you have, I'm sure Barb would take those for us and get those done out of this year's budget.